Welcome back to another episode of Boom or Bust, your home for NFL Draft Talk. I'm your host, Terry, and today we're doing the last round, or should I say the last group in the first round of evaluations, and that is the safeties. Okay, just to give you a reminder, and for all those new listeners, we're doing the real grade segment at the end. We want to pick a team, look back at their draft from 3 years ago, give it a grade. Today's team is the Green Bay Packers. So, all those cheesehead fans, stick around to the end of the episode and we're going to grade that draft. Also, we want to give a reminder to everyone listening that you can go to the description section and find the link with all the written notes that I have so far for the different positions. Okay, so with that said, let's get into the safety group. We got an interesting group this year. Typically, I would say, safeties, they tend to be kind of less value, and you tend to have a handful or so that are high round picks, or even, 1 through 4. And so, or first round through fourth round. And so what we've seen in the last few years has been a trend. And I talked about the linebackers being the position that has changed the most since I started this due to spread offense, but safety would be a close second, in which you are demanding a lot more from safeties to have the ability to not only play over the slot as a nickel, but also play man coverage on those receivers as they get smaller and quicker and faster. And so the ability to play down in the box, used to just kind of have your bruisers, your guys that are kind of smaller linebackers. And they can patrol that, when you play cover 3 or whatever, or cover 1, depending on your corners. And they can play that alley tough, almost like an extra run defender or extra linebacker. And then what we started to morph into is needing safeties that can do both. So that way we don't have one guy running down into the box on each side of the field, but we can kind of flip-flop. Now, not every team does that. I think you still definitely have value in a single high safety. There's value in just being a box safety. You look at a team like the Seahawks where Earl Thomas and Cam Chancellor, very dynamic, definitely, but they don't ask them to switch roles all the time. And, they kind of let them do what they're best at. There's value in that, but there are teams that value versatility. You look more like a Patriots or a team like that like to use safeties in multiple ways. And so overall, we're getting to a time where safeties have to be a lot more athletic than they used to be. So anyway, like I said, this is an interesting year just because you have a higher number of legit prospects than I think we had in the past. And even still, you can find safeties. They're not like receivers and running backs, but you can find them in later rounds and still have good careers. But typically, the top athletic ones are going to get taken early. But anyway, let's get into it. We got Minkah Fitzpatrick from Alabama, 6'1", 202. This is the guy everyone was talking about. Had a lot of expectations coming in to watch his film. And I'm going to be honest with you, I wasn't super impressed with Minkah. And it's not to say that he's not an impressive player. It's just the way that Bama used him. He wasn't in a lot of situations for me to see exactly what he could be. And one of those reasons is he played nickel a lot. And so most people I think know what nickel is. But if you got a slot receiver or second receiver, then the person playing over them, sometimes they bring in the third corner. Early downs, they might bring a safety down, but that's the thing with Minkah is that he was able to play nickel corner pretty much. But then he played dime linebacker. So when they went to third and long, you got 4 guys rushing. You got one linebacker, and then he played the other linebacker. They call it a dime linebacker. And the thing that he brings is his versatility, because if you watch Bama, even though he was a starting safety, they had 2 other safeties on the field all the time when he was playing, because he really was just taking over that nickel duty. And then even when he played the dime linebacker, they bring in an extra corner and they take his spot. So he gives you that flexibility where you don't have to bring in that extra corner if you don't got it, or you don't got to bring in that unathletic linebacker, you could put him at that spot. So he brings a lot of versatility, but again, on tape, I wasn't able to see a lot of what he could do. Now, the things I did see though, I liked his range in zone, in short zone, not deep zone, very different. He wasn't in deep zone hardly ever over the top, and that's, hard to evaluate. But as far as short zone, like some the linebacker would cover or cover two, he looked really good. They had him play a lot of weird stuff where he'd line up one way, run across the field at the snap, get in this zone, or run across field into man coverage. So he showed a lot of range and ability to get all across the field. So that's very encouraging. As far as him playing zone, I thought he was good. Nothing special. He just kind of really stared at the quarterback and covered green grass. That's always hard to say. He covered green grass, and I would have liked to see him play a little more aware with the receiver routes. But again, him with having that great range, you can help discipline his eyes and coach him up to what you want him to look at. And knowing he has great range, that's really more the important part. Now, in man coverage, I liked his range again. I liked his ability to play physical with a receiver, but also had the speed to kind of play with them. But I don't know if he's that all-around piece because he's not huge. And so you put him up with tight ends, I think he's going to get boxed out pretty easily. I remember talking about Jamal Adams for last year, and I loved him, and I loved him this year as a rookie. But the one thing I did watch when he was on TV is that he struggled with tight ends, those bigger bodies that they have in the leagues these days. He's fast and explosive, but he's just not long enough. Minkah's pretty long, but he's not big, so I think he gets out physical by bigger tight ends. And then run support, again, it's tough to tell because he's not coming down the alley, but he's not afraid to play the run. I think he can get off of blocks at times. I think he needs definitely some more technique, but I thought he was above average in run support. And it's tough though, because with a safety, you really want to see his ability to come from a deep position and run down the alley and patrol that area. And we didn't get to see that with Minkah, but he kept himself involved. So again, his versatility right now is the calling card. Some people are saying he might be a corner, and that's hard for me to say. I didn't see him play corner. And even if the numbers pan out, it's tough. It's tough for us to say. NFL teams will be able to work him out and, talk to coaches and see if he can play corner. I think he's an interesting chess piece, but I don't know if he's as valuable as people think, because let's say he's just a nickel guy or a mismatch guy. He's a dime linebacker nickel type. That's not as valuable as a guy that can do that and play deep safety. And I just don't know how well he can play deep safety. So I'm not saying he's bad. It's just a lot of question marks for me because I didn't get to see him play that position. All right, then we go to Derwin James, whole nother animal. So 6'3", 215, Florida State. Now this is definitely more conventional. He was a 2-high safety. Played in the box at times and cover 3 and whatnot, but definitely something a little more familiar. Now, so here's the thing with Derwin overall. Let's just get to it. His injury from last year, I think he regressed quite a bit as a player. And I don't usually look back again. I've said that before. But with major injuries, I try to look because I watched Derwin and I didn't see what everybody was talking about. I saw a very stiff guy. I saw a guy that was very limited in his long speed. You can see the size and the physicality. You can see the ball skills. He has very long arms, shows some explosion. But I didn't see that overall freak athlete that people were talking about. And so I did take a look at his last year's tape. And it's a completely different player, in my opinion. I felt I was looking at somebody totally different. Just his movement skills alone were so different last year. And that worries me because if you were injured, okay, that's fine. I'm not going to hold that against you. But when it affects your play, that's something that's got to be taken into consideration. And so the question becomes, and it's one I can't answer, are you still going to be able to get to what you were, or is this just who you are now? And that's something that the NFL teams, again, they get more answers to that. But I saw the hype. I mean, if you're looking at last year's tape, the man is big. He could fly. He could move very well from laterally. He could explode, like I said, with the vertical, long arms. He could hit. He could do a lot. And so you're talking about more athletic Cam Chancellor, what they were saying, and I saw that. But this year I just didn't. And, so looking at what I saw this year, in short zone, again, kind of staring down the quarterback, not very aware. In man coverage, I thought he long enough strides where he could stay with receivers, and he definitely had the physicality to dictate the speed against them. And I liked him in run support. I mean, he was a little hesitant, had some bad angles, but I did like him when he arrived on time to make the hit. It's just that his angles were bad, and sometimes he allowed some really big runs. Again, it seemed like his explosion wasn't there downhill. And then I like him as a blitzer too. Pretty strong off the edge, good lean, good length. Real exciting players, just the medicals really scare me. Then we got Ronnie Harrison out of Alabama. I need to wait for he has more tape. However, I really like what I saw. Now, this is the opposite of Minkah. This is a guy playing traditional two-man or two-high and single-high. And so that was the interesting part. He was the single-high safety sometimes. Sometimes he was also in the box with Minkah. So I got to see him do both. One thing I know about Ronnie, I love his ability in the run game. He does not hesitate coming down the alley. He makes a hit. He can stick people. And he's not scared at all. He understands the angles. I really liked his ability to play the run. I liked his movement, 4.5, change direction. And let me go back. So safeties, I measured change of direction, ball skills, range, and tackling. So all those you pretty much heard of except for range. Range, again, is more so your ability in the deep half to go from hash to sideline, or, sideline back to hash to hash the numbers, all those different things. What's your ability as a deep safety? Can you cover a lot of area, as we know, when trying to stay over the top? And what's your awareness in staying over the top, or do you short it and, leave your corner out to dry, all that good stuff. So I like this range. I like his movement skills. I love this tackling. I got to see more, but I think Rodney, and now I'm starting to see him as a first rounder with the media. But at first I was like, man, how's this guy not first rounder? He's 6'3", 214. I don't know what he measured in at the combine, but that's big, and he can move very well. So I like him better than Minkah, to be honest with you, which is not going to be a popular statement. But honestly, I do. I have to watch to see him play more man coverage, see if he can do that. But as a deep over the top safety, I really like him. Then you got Justin Reed from Stanford, younger brother of Eric Reed. And I like Reed. Reed, the one thing about him, very high IQ. Very high IQ. There's interviews with him talking about football, and he talks the way coaches want our players to talk. He understands a lot of the concepts. He understands the vocabulary. He understands his job. He understands everybody else's job. And so that's something you love to see. I really liked him in deep zone. He stayed over the top. Again, a player that's smart, he understands his responsibility. And because he knows the concepts, he understands where he needs to be, and he doesn't blow assignments too often. I liked him in short zone. I saw him bait quarterbacks. I saw him break on the ball well and make plays on the ball when the quarterback threw it late. In man coverage, he played against receivers and tight ends and running backs. I liked him in man coverage. Again, 6'1", 204, long and strong enough to kind of be physical with receivers, but fast enough to stick with them. And then run support again. Comes down the alley well. I like his tackling. He really wraps up. He's not looking for any kill shots, but he'll wrap up, and he plays safety. He plays that last line of defense. Average against blocks. A lot of these guys can get better with that. and an average blitzer, but I like his game overall. He's really solid. From what I heard, he had a good combine, so that's only going to help. I think he's going to be as good or a little bit better than Eric Reed was. Then, real quick, you got Kaiser White from West Virginia, 6'2", 216. Little tough evaluation. He played what I call dog safety, so in a 4-2-5 or 3-3-5, you got those guys pretty much like Minkah was, but not exactly, but he played in the slot a lot, down in the box. He wasn't really an over-the-top deep safety. So a little tough of evaluation. Definitely a stiffer, not as athletic as the other guys, but a strong hitter and a smart, tough player. Then lastly, as the one I got to evaluate was Deshaun Elliott from Texas. Man, I really liked him. There's a lot of parts to like. There's some parts you want him to get better at. But, as far as what he did a number of things. He was in double high. Sometimes he was in single high, but they played him in the box a little bit. But, that traditional safety that you want. I really liked him in the deep coverage, staying over the top. Sometimes I thought he was a little too far. Now that might be due to his speed. I got to see what he ran, but he might be a slower guy, and he doesn't seem like a burner, but he might be a slower guy, and so he liked to give cushion. I thought sometimes, it was too much cushion, but he did do his job and stay over the top. Really loved him in his short zone. Great drive on the ball, great ability to bait quarterbacks, good eyes, understood what routes were, and really had a good drive on the ball. So everything in kind of man coverage and short zone I really liked about him. I liked them against tight ends and receivers. I don't think he was like a shutdown or anything, but with his physicality, I think he'll be able to stay with guys in the slot. And then in the run support, definitely not afraid to hit. This guy was physical, not a great wrap-up tackler, but he was very physical, and he will look for a knockout shot on guys. Would like to see him come down the alley a little better, but still pretty good run defender. And then the blitzer, just more, below average. I didn't really like him in his blitzes. But like I said, stiff guy. I don't know what his range is going to be in the deep area, but I do like him as a strong safety that has more run responsibility. And some occasional short zone stuff because he showed his ability to intercept there too. Okay. Woo! So those are the safeties I got to look at. I know there's actually a couple names. This is what happens after the combine. A couple names come up that people are now all of a sudden interested in. And so those guys, that's what round 2 is for. They'll be adding them on. But those are the safeties that I was able to evaluate. And overall, like I said, this is one of the more intriguing safety class, some interesting prospects. Usually a safety class isn't, it doesn't have a lot of depth, or sometimes doesn't have a lot of top heavy talent. But Minkah is, considered top 5. Again, I have big question marks on him. Derwin James, considered top 10. Big question marks on him. Definitely there's something there with those two. I just, if I'm picking, I would have to ask some serious questions. But if you're talking about his talents, this class is more talented at safety than it's been in a long time. So if you want a safety, I think there's going to be some depth down there to find guys that can either hit or that can cover. So anyway, those are the safeties. Let's get to the real grade. Green Bay Packers 2015. As I pull it up. Okay, so we got 8 players. Number 1, round 1, we got Demarius Randall, end of the first, out of Arizona State. D-back, still with the team, on and off starter, or I should say he contributes. Then in the second round, doubled up, went with Quentin Rollins out of Miami of Ohio. Corner and on and off contributor. Third round, Ty Montgomery, receiver Stanford, was kind of just a guy and then changed the running back when they were hurt. And now one of the favorite fantasy guys out there. So definitely starting. Fourth round, Jake Ryan, linebacker Michigan, got really liked. And he's starting now for now. Brett Huntley in the fifth round, which is crazy now to think about him going to fifth, but quarterback out of UCLA, who played pretty well in the absence of Aaron Rodgers after years of kind of sitting and being groomed. Sixth round, Aaron Ripkowski out of Oklahoma took over Coon's spot as their local fullback. Then you got Christian Ringo, who is bounced around with a few teams, still in the league, but not with the Packers. Kennard Backman, tight end, who is out of the league. So, 8 players, 1 out of the league, 1 with another team, and 6 still with the team. Out of the 6 that are with the team, I will give you Jake Ryan, Montgomery, Aaron Rikowski 3. I guess I give you Demarius Randall, even though he's not a full-fledged starter. But, with so many defensive backs playing at one time, I'll give you a contribution. So really 3.5, whatever you want to call it. So, almost half your players starting for you. And quarterback, it's tough. He's a 5th rounder, but he's a backup. So definitely points for that. So overall, at the surface of it, you can't argue with this draft. The 2 guys that are not with your team were both in the 6th round. One of your starters, even though it's a fullback, is a 6th round pick. One of your other starters was a 4th round pick, so that's big too. The problem comes in when you talk about your 1st and 2nd round picks being in the same position and neither one being a top flight starter. And so Randall and Rollins, I wouldn't say bust. And I see the Packers, of course, but I wouldn't sit here and say that I have intimate knowledge, but I know they aren't bust. They're still around the team. If they were bust, they wouldn't be on the team. And so they aren't what you want them to be, though. Still with the team, and that might just be because of where you drafted them at. But they definitely did not become what you wanted them to be. But then you hit on some later round picks. So that's kind of a balancing act you have to do with that. But I will say one thing with the Packers, and it's crazy that they let their GM move, but Packers, one of the NFL teams with the most drafted players on their roster. And so this is key to having drafts where people stick around and a league where so many people let their talent walk. And so that is important to continue to bring in guys that will be around for 3 to 4 years. However, you do want them to produce, and, you can understand the knock there. But I'm going to give you big points for finding a backup quarterback. That is, and grooming him, because he was not groomed coming out, not at all. So I'm going to give you big points for that, because that is a very valuable position. I'm going to give you points for finding a starting linebacker, starting fullback. I'm going to give you points for making a starting running back out of a receiver. But those first 2 really hurt. So I'm going to give this draft a C+. Yeah. And that's not because I'm a Bears fan. All right. So go to the comment section, though. That's it for me. Go to the comment section. Let me know what you think about these safeties. More so about Minkah and Derwin James. Have you seen them? What do you think? How do you think they project? And do you think Derwin James will get back to what he was? Go to the comment section. Let me know. Start that convo. Thumbs up, subscribe, share it around, and thank you for listening.